My guest at this time is Jim DeMint. He's a former congressman and U.S. Senator from South Carolina. He served as president of the Heritage Foundation and is now the founding chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute. Along with Rachel Bovard, Mr. DeMint is also co-author of the new book, Conservative, What to Keep. In the first half of our conversation, Mr. DeMint described what it means to conserve, to be a conservative, and some of the critical aspects of our society, even beyond politics, that conservatives want to conserve. As our conversation continued, we talked about the free markets and how government can help people get a hand up, but how it's important to make sure people don't get dependent on that help.
Well, that's the key. The dependency becomes a snare. A lot of our federal programs are designed to become snares, in effect. If you're on welfare, it's hard to get off of it because you can get more than you can in an entry-level job. Or if you're on Medicaid and start making money, you can lose your health insurance. So we have to design these programs that are really safety nets to catch people who have fallen through the cracks, but the whole system needs to be designed to get people off of government dependency because that steals your dignity and your motivation. All the data tells us that. It doesn't help people long-term to create this generational cycle of people who just live off the government. So government has a role, but Greg, the support and charity for those in need needs to start at the local level, the family level, the church level, local organizations, and then the states need to do something. The last resort should be a federal program because it's one size fits all, and that doesn't work when everyone has different needs.
Sir, what do you see as some of the ideas that encapsulate that either you're advocating or that members of Congress or maybe at the state level are advocating that don't get a lot of attention but you think would go a long way to advancing a conservative perspective where people get more opportunity rather than the opportunity to enroll in different government programs? Because obviously politics dominates the headlines. Analysis of tweets is easier than analysis of different nuances of programs, but that doesn't mean they're out there. So what are some exciting ideas that you're seeing and that invigorate you but aren't getting known about by a lot of people?
Well, it's a great question. And the last part of the book, Conservative, gets into some of the policy failures of the left, but also the policy ideas of the right that need to push us forward as a nation. It has to begin with education. People have to be prepared to succeed in a free society. And we've seen over decades of government control of education that what we're doing here is not working. So one of the exciting ideas that we need, it's just common sense, is to take this money that we are putting into government schools and allow it to follow the students to wherever they go. And these are called education savings accounts. And it's a little bit of a misnomer because we're not expecting parents to save money in there. What we're doing is putting a good part of the money that we spend on each student in a public school, allow them to make a choice if they would like to whether it's homeschool, whether it's a private school, a parochial, a Christian school. And this would not only, we've seen it in 15 states who are trying versions of this right now. And not only does it create a whole lot more education opportunities, but public schools get better because they have to compete. So it's a win-win for everyone, and we need to expand that as quickly as possible. The one deficit in all of that is the federal money cannot follow the student because we have never passed anything in Washington that gives the states the flexibility to give students more choice, and that really goes back to opposition from the teachers union. But if we can do more with education, then people are prepared to succeed. And there are a lot of other things we can do. One of the things we push in the book is more energy freedom. If we create parity of all energy sources, just like natural gas, combustion engines can be easily transformed and running on compressed natural gas. It's about a third less polluting than gasoline. It's plentiful in America. We wouldn't have to import anything. So it's good for the environment. It would cost less over time. But it's an exciting idea. Developing more of our own energy would create more opportunities in America just economically. So we could go down the list, and I hope folks will buy conservative and look into it, because if you call yourself a conservative, you need to know what that really means.
Exactly. Yeah, the book is Conservative, What to Keep. And just a couple of quick questions before we let you go, Senator. I made the assumption that folks in Congress have good ideas that don't see the light of day. Other folks I know believe that politics has essentially just become a back-and-forth spitting match, and that we're not talking much about ideas. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that the Senate's doing a lot of work on confirmations, but isn't doing a lot of policy work, at least that makes it to the floor. So how active is the policy, the creative engine when it comes to these free market principles right now?
Well, not very. It's right now, and the House is just consumed with impeachment. If it's not Russia, it'll be Ukraine. If it's not that, it's chewing gum in class. I mean, they've announced from the very beginning that they were going to impeach the president just because he hijacked their agenda. They assumed that after they accumulate all this power in Washington that they would be running the federal government. So Trump has been certainly an imposition to that. But over on the Senate side, they're not doing anything really other than confirmations, because they know the House is not going to pass anything. This next election is pretty critical. I suspect that if Trump does win re-election, that the Democrats will have to concede that they need to work with him somewhat. And there's so many things we can do, like I mentioned, in education and energy. There's more we could do to simplify taxes and regulations to create a better economic environment. These things are easy and don't cost anything. There just needs to be a little more cooperation. But, Greg, unfortunately, as we point out in the book, I mean, we've got a huge struggle in this country and this world between the right and the left. I mean, it's not just liberal Democrats. I mean, we can work with those. But this whole progressive era that essentially is trying to use climate change as a way to take over global economies. And if you look into what they're really doing and how they're organized and what their motivation is, it's a little bit scary. And everybody needs to be informed as citizens of what we're up against and play a constructive role and not play in politics, but just doing what's best for the country and what we know will make our country better in the future.
And last 30 seconds here, you mentioned the growing chasm here when the progressives are gaining more influence and finding common ground is harder to do. Most of the time we're going to have divided government. Not all the time, but a lot of time we will. So when the divide gets wider and wider, how do you get stuff done that actually helps people?
Well, it's really hard. And what's the biggest problem with that, and I know we're short on time, is right now in order to keep the government running, you have to give the Democrats everything they want to spend and then give the Republicans everything they want to spend on military, and we're about to bankrupt our country spending. And so at some point, we're going to have to say we can't keep doing this. And I suspect it's going to be after the next election. Trump knows we've got to stop spending in debt, and it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out, I think. But at some point, we need to do that. And so I suspect that time is coming relatively quickly.
Another important debate that needs to happen and way too often gets pushed away. Senator, congratulations on the new book. Congratulations on the new organization. We look forward to talking to you again down the line.
Thank you, Greg.
You bet, sir. Former South Carolina Congressman and Senator Jim DeMint, now the founding chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute. The brand new book, along with co-author Rachel Bovard, is Conservative, What to Keep. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.